Basic Education Minister Angie Motshekga has confirmed her department will be resuming the National School Nutrition Programme. The minister earlier gave an update on schools' state of readiness ahead of the return to full-time learning.
On school nutrition, again, what we are very happy about with the return, that now we'll be able to do all our social programs, the school nutrition programs, the vaccination programs for cervical cancer, which we're running, but also your deworming programs are going to come back on board. And that's what is also exciting us about the full return, that all the services that we're providing in schools will be returned.
Let's continue to get reaction. We are joined by Basil Manuel from Teachers Union Naptosa. Mr. Manuel, welcome and thank you very much for joining us today. Let's start off by getting your reaction on the return to full-time learning. Are you on board with the Education Department's programme?
Good afternoon and thanks for having me. Certainly we are. Naptosa from the beginning of the year was calling for a review of the rotational system so that we can check in again whether this is still working for us. And certainly, having taken advice from a variety of people, particularly our scientists, we are convinced that this is the right measure at the right time. So we're in full support of it.
Do you have any concerns? Are you confident the department has put the necessary and adequate measures in place to ensure the safety of learners and teachers during this full return to learning and teaching?
Full support doesn't necessarily mean we are blind to all the problems that are there. And I think the minister's presentation today at a press conference was very balanced in that it acknowledged all the problems that are there, many of which we have put on the table, not only as Naptosa, but the other teacher unions as well. Things about safety, and we think about various provinces because they are at different levels when it comes to this. We think of the overcrowding issue, which everybody tells us, and of course it is so that it's been around for a long time. But what we've asked for is a plan. Let's have a plan on the table so that we can address this as we go along, so that everybody knows where we are going with this. And the minister's only indication that she's approached Treasury, she's approached Cabinet to make of education a major project to eradicate this problem. That is what we are really pleased about. But we are also concerned about the supply of the things that make schools safe, the non-pharmaceutical measures. There's the mask issue, there's the issue of sanitizers, etc., and water that is still outstanding in a few places. We've put these on the table. They need addressing. However, it's provinces like KZN that really worry us, where up to now, all the teachers still haven't been appointed. Now, the minister alluded to that. We've asked for the intervention of the national minister in the province like that, because certainly there are huge gaps with teachers not having been appointed over the last 2 years, meaning that we may get to school tomorrow and we've welcomed all the learners back, which is something we want, and then there are no teachers for them. That would be a sad day.
One of the issues we need to look at more carefully now that we're returning to full attendance is vaccination of teachers. We know that a number of teachers have declined to be vaccinated. Of course, they are placed at greater risk of infection to COVID-19, having not been vaccinated. What is Naptosa's position on ongoing vaccination of teachers?
We certainly have been unapologetic about our support for the vaccination program. We've been there in the forefront, we've encouraged people, and we still do, both the teachers and the learners who qualify. And we are still there saying to our own members who may not have vaccinated, you've got to join the program. You've got to keep yourself safe above all other things. We've even surveyed our members, and our members are in favor of a vaccine mandate. And we are saying when the time is right, we will talk more about this. However, we want to first talk to our people. They've got to come to the party, because it's not about yourself only. It's about being civic-minded enough, as someone else has said, to look after the greater good. And that is what we are now encouraging. We want every single teacher vaccinated.
If schools were to implement mandatory vaccine policies, which certainly some private schools might be entitled to do, what would your position be should a teacher face a situation where she might be removed from the school due to an unwillingness to vaccinate? Because that's a very tricky situation, having to support both the teacher's rights but also the safety of the school at large.
Absolutely. Naptosa has been working with teachers now and legal people to say, let's look at what the legal ramifications would be if we do get to that point, so that we educate ourselves about what our rights are and what the possibilities would be to even lose in a situation like this. And at the moment, our legal people are saying to us, you're sitting on the wrong side of the law if you're simply just refusing. But there are exceptions, and we are also looking at those, because as a teacher union, we have to defend the rights of teachers. At the same time, we've got to look after the greater good of teachers. And that is why our first port of call has been encouraging. But this is going to be a crunch that I think many of us will face. And as we go along, we hope that the greater clarities from the higher courts will come so that decisions are made easier. Because certainly it's like the proverbial rock in a hard place.
Absolutely. Another rock in a hard place is the issue of overcrowding. You have touched on it before. We all know very well it's not a new issue. It hasn't arisen since the pandemic started. However, the pandemic might have highlighted for us a need for urgency, where we have failed to address overcrowding effectively in the past. Perhaps now the spotlight is very firmly on overcrowding, that it's something that we absolutely have to address with urgency now. You mentioned that the Minister has spoken to Cabinet to try and expedite certain measures to reduce overcrowding. Do you feel there is enough action at the highest levels to try and assist teachers? Because ultimately, while overcrowding does affect the quality of education learners receive, it very much affects directly the working conditions of teachers.
Absolutely. At first, let me say that we don't believe that we have done enough in the last 28 years. We could have done more, but that's history now. The question is, what are we going to do about it right now and into the future? Because our teachers tell us, when you have 60 children, no matter how good you are as a teacher, it eventually boils down to child minding and crowd control more than quality teaching. And let's face the facts. The schools that are overcrowded are the most disadvantaged of schools. And so we're disadvantaging those learners even more. So what we want to see is a real plan. And we are going along with the Minister to say we are approaching the right people now to make this a priority. However, it's a moving target because there's in-migration in certain areas like Gauteng. At the same time, there are more than 1,000 schools damaged just by the vagaries of the weather. And this also demands money. We can't leave it. There are schools in Pietermaritzburg where it has been pouring with rain over the last few days, and the rain pouring through into the classrooms and into the offices as well. So these are urgent matters. But overcrowding as a long-term project needs to be addressed, but let's address the most critical ones first. Our people are running out of patience, and certainly Naptosa stands with them there, because our teachers have been long suffering. The impact on the mental health of teachers, on their ability to feel good about the job, is being drummed every day. They are being battered by the bad conditions. So we certainly want to see things improve. I've seen terrible pictures of overcrowding, terrible pictures of learners wading through rivers, of a principal sitting in his office with an umbrella, for heaven's sake. Those can't be the images of a South Africa that we want to build. So we are supporting the Minister, saying we want this as a special project, not just as a project, as a special project where more money must be dedicated to getting the job done. And I want to acknowledge provinces like Gauteng that have tried different methods to try and resolve the pressure in certain schools. And we want to see more of those happening, as opposed to spending exorbitant amounts on badly built schools where people are simply ripping the system off.